Okay, so again, good afternoon, selamat ngalih hari, selamat lemai, selamat petang semua.
Selamat petang, Doktor.
Okay, so all right, hopefully everybody is doing okay, ya. Semua sehat kah?
Sehat, Doktor.
Okay. Before I go to the lecture proper today, just a quick reminder. So reminder regarding your assignment, which will be due next week, yeah, a week from now, more or less. Okay. So I think most of you know what to do. Just basically what I want from the class is to for the group, yeah, to come up with a topic or identify rather the development issue or issues and expand on that, yeah, explore that issues. I leave it to you actually how you're going to go about doing it, but there are some guidelines that were given in the assignment which you can follow. But if you think it's not relevant, just forget about it. I mean, there's one question that a lot of groups have been asking on the process, or question number 4. Specifically, just to tell me more or less how you decide to come up with the topic or choose the topic or the issue, yeah. So question related to that, maybe why choosing the topic, how do you decide among your group, and so on. So it doesn't have to be a long one, yeah, right? But if you decide not to respond to that question, it's okay to me too, yeah. It's not very critical. The more critical one, or the more important one, is the discussion on the issues of development that your group has chosen, yeah. Okay, all right. Any questions or comments before I proceed with the lecture? I mean, okay. So quiet. Okay, I assume quiet mean no comment. Yeah. Okay. So let me go with the lecture or LU4. So the lecture 4 is actually looking at, first of all, we'll look at some of the critics, yeah? Critics of Marxism. Remember last week we were talking about Karl Marx and his ideas, yeah, on mainly on socialism, but eventually he was talking about communism as a philosophy, as an ideology, and perhaps to some extent it was translated into political ideology as well. Yeah, but for our course, we are more concerned about development, or rather the development economics. Sorry, the economic development of a particular country. So he has these ideas. Actually, he was concerned about what was happening in Europe, and in particular, the what was happening in London, where he lived, Western countries, and how capitalism has more or less caused, in his opinion at least, problem for the workers, or his term for it is proletariat. So the rich become richer at the expense of the workers. So he was concerned about that. Excuse me. And he came out with the two major classes of people in society, what they call the bourgeoisie or the middle class or the capitalists, and on the other end is the lower group called the workers or the proletariat. So it was based on this idea that he think that is not good. So eventually there will be, struggle by those by the workers or the proletariat who are being oppressed by the middle class or by the capitalists. That was his idea, right? But as we have seen last week, the revolution that he was talking about actually never happened except for there's a revolution in Russia, but that is a different thing. Yeah, it's not quite close to what he had in mind when he started writing. Yeah. So all right. So he wants equality in society. That was his goal. Okay. So he want everybody to be equal, to have access to wealth, yeah, and opportunities and so on. So it's quite a good philosophy when you come to think of it, yeah, in a way, so that everybody will have, yeah, rather than have not. Right. Okay, so let's look at some of the criticism of Marxism. Um, all right, but first of all, this is what is more or less what I have trying to revisit or recall just now. About Marxism being a political ideology, um, and how change and improve society, how to change improve society by implementing uh, the ideas of socialism or ideology. Okay, right. So there is a class struggle between the different classes, the bourgeoisie and the workers, the proletariat. Yeah. So they believe, Marxists, including Karl Marx himself, yeah, believe that capitalism, the currently dominant form of economic management, will lead to oppression of the workers or the working class. This working class not only make up the majority of the world's population, but also who spend most of their life working for the benefit, yeah, or for the profit of the bourgeoisie, the working ruling class. So that was his Marx main ideas. Yeah. So he want to get rid of that differences in the classes. Yeah. So to correct this inequality between the two classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, Marxism sought a proletarian revolution, they call it, or the workers' struggle revolution. Yeah, when the workers or the working class take control of government and then implement reform to benefit their class. Okay, again, that was his idea. So such a system of socialism, yeah, is socialism, but Marxists believe that eventually socialist society will develop into a entirely classless system or classless society known as communism. Okay, communism. Okay, so right, so I think he died in 1983. But nevertheless, his ideas still remains, yeah, until today. Um, he was basically an economist as well as philosopher, and he wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1849 together with his colleague, yeah, Engel, yeah. So he wrote in his article or his um, in his what I call this, his book, yeah, where he said, "Workers of all lands unite. You have nothing to lose but your chance." In other words, he is trying to promote um, unity and struggle, yeah, by those who are being oppressed and all that. So his ideas was still very influential, which led to the development of several uh, communist political systems around the world. That, at least in terms of label, yeah. But in actual fact, if you analyze um, the system that they have, actually is not quite communist, yeah. Uh, even if it is called communist, yeah, countries, but then when you look at that, it's not quite the same as the original idea of Marx, yeah, on communism. Okay, all right. So among these countries are China, North Korea, and Cuba. And I've shown you some pictures last week also. The problem with socialism and as practiced in different countries. In some countries, for example, um, in South America, didn't work quite well as that of countries in Europe. Okay, so even though they practice what they call socialism, yeah. So even among communism as well, you could see differences as well. So again, when you compare communism and democracy, as what was shown, a comparison between Cuba and or Cuba and Singapore. That's what I showed you last week. Um, Democracy and also capitalism, what they have in Singapore compared to what they have in Cuba. So you could see the differences in terms of the standard of living, in terms of development in those two countries. Okay, so beyond Karl Marx, yeah, um, himself, there's all still Marxism um, throughout the world. Okay, so work, the body of work created by academics, by scholars, and perhaps we can call revolutionaries, yeah, who have adopted Marx ideas, still can be found, yeah, in some parts of the world. One of those person is, as an example, is Antonio Gramsci, and he was supposed to be one of the first, yeah, in Europe who spread the idea. Yeah. So Antonio Gramsci, he was an Italian political theorist and also a founding member of the Communist Party of Italy. And because of his involvement in that movement, he was imprisoned by Mussolini's government during that time, yeah, regime. So he's renowned for his concept of cultural hegemony, sorry, as a means of maintaining the state, yeah, in capitalist society. Right. So he doesn't like that idea. Yeah, the fact that somebody or a state controlling others, yeah, through the cultural hegemony. All right. So just to explain a bit on what hegemony is. Hegemony is the way in which those in power, those in position of power, maintain their control. Yeah. So, for example, those who, for example, America has is world power, so they try to control the rest of the countries in the world. Yeah. All right. So the dominant ideologies are considered hegemonic, and the power in society is maintained through the ideologies, yeah, constructing ideologies, which are usually promoted by mass media, through television, through radio and whatnot, yeah, and now even social media as well. Okay. All right. So some of the critics of Marxism, will look at that later on, particularly by Max Weber and the rest. Yeah? So in practice, actually, Karl Marx theory has failed. Yeah? Has failed. Didn't quite work in practice. Although in theory it sounds quite good. Yeah. But did not quite work in the real world, right? And his views are was seen as conflicting with human nature, yeah, human nature. So it doesn't. One of the reason why it doesn't work. Yeah? But capitalism also, which Marx did not quite like during his days, also has changed. Yeah, has changed. For example, the conditions or the conditions of the workplace. The what else? The salary or the wages also has increased, unlike the low wages that workers were getting during his time. Right. So this has changed, and that's part of the reason why his theory did not quite work as he predicted. Yeah? So so his criticisms of capitalism are no longer relevant. Okay. Okay. So one of the persons, yeah, who is a big critic, or probably Marx's biggest critics, was Max Weber. Right? Weber is also popular for his management school thoughts as well. Yeah? On management, sorry. Yeah. So Weber, he argued that Marx's idea was too economically dystomistic. Now his theory, Marx's theory, was um, too economically dystomistic. In other words, he was just looking at economic perspective rather than other factors, right? So Weber believed that there were many other factors other than economy that affect the society. Okay, so it's not just economy, politics, social conditions, and all others. Yeah, policies and so on. Those are also affecting the society as well. Okay, so Max Weber argued that there were more than two polarizing classes. Now remember, Marx was just talking about two classes, right? The working class and the capitalists, yeah. So or the middle class. So Max Weber um, instead um, said that, or argued that there were more than two classes or polarizing classes, and he advocated the importance of the growing middle class as well. So there are more than two classes of just the capitalists and the working class. Okay, so middle class is also growing in numbers as well. Yeah. All right. So at the same time, many people also um, thought that Marx was rather an idealist. In other words, um, he sees things or wants things to be in an ideal situation, right? An ideal situation, and felt that his theories were not fulfilled as communism lost the drive. I'm sorry, that's a spelling error. The drive it had following the end of the Cold War. Let me correct that. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let me save it. Okay. So a lot of people think that Marx was an idealist, and also that his theories could not be fulfilled because communism has lost the drive, lost the momentum, rather. Yeah. Following the end of the Cold War. So it doesn't pick up um, as much as it was anticipated earlier on. Yeah. Okay. Using this slide here just again to emphasize the criticisms of Marx by Weber's. Right. So Marx was one-sided view. Yeah. And emphasizes on material factors, on the economy, the means of production he was talking about. Yeah. So Weber thinks this is the whole story. He thought this is the whole story. Sorry. Karl Marx thinks this is the whole story to human livelihood, and he overemphasizes on material factors. And that's just to repeat what I had mentioned earlier on. And in the process, he underemphasizes, or rather, the ideal factors, especially religion, for example. Yeah, the Protestantism or the religious group, yeah, or in England during that time, yeah. So he did not examine the new ways of thinking and also new motivations, right? So how did Weber come up with the argument, or rather the criticism? It was based on his own study on the Protestant ethnic, right? The Christians group in England during that time. So based on his study, he found out that the Protestants have certain characteristics. Yeah. Um, for example, they are being um, Calvinists. Yeah. Um, hardworking people. Um, they like to work. Yeah. And believe that um, live in the glory of God. Yeah. What they do is what God is supposed to be asking them to do. Yeah. Now the Calvinist here is what is known as the Reform Christian group, or the true believer. Yeah. And they they believe in the fact that Christ, or Jesus Christ, became human. Yeah. Um, who's God and become human, and so people could be saved by Christ. So that is their main belief. Yeah. So the ascetic lifestyle here refers to being self-disciplined, very self-disciplined, and abstention or to free themselves from all forms of indulgence, like, for example, drinking, uh, all those things that are viewed um, as sinful, for example, right? So they try to refrain themselves. So that kind of lifestyle, yeah. So they work long hours for the glory of God. They believe in the idleness as a sin. In other words, if you don't work, if you don't do anything, it is sinful. Yeah, merupakan satu sin. Yeah, okay. So and then to them, money should be saved and invested, and not to be spent. Right. So whatever they earn and all that. Other than for buying food, yeah, the needs for survival, those money should be saved and invested and not to be spent. And that, according to Weber, based on his studies, led to the spirit of capitalism. Okay, because in capitalism, it requires capital, which is from here, yeah, money that is saved, yeah, so that becomes the capital ataupun modal, ya, untuk dilaburkan, ya, for investment. Okay, and then also in the spirit of not spirit, sorry, I'm spelling error. The quite hard-working workforce, yeah, for them to produce more goods and more profit, yeah, more benefits, for the for industrialists or the capitalists. And they also capitalism also values productivity in terms of promoting efficiency of production. So those, yeah. So Max Weber saw these characteristics of the qualities of the Protestants fits well with the capitalism, yeah, that was happening during that time. Okay, so that was his findings lah, ya. Jadi which led him to more or less criticize Karl Marx earlier theory or ideology. Okay, all right. So I would like to share with you this. This is a nice lecture, actually, a recorded lecture from this website. And but this is more for international studies, but I thought it was quite interesting, at least in my opinion. It was clear, just to illustrate some of the theories, yeah, the neo-Marxism theories, yeah, including the world system theory and so on. So so we are now moving away or beyond Marxism. Yeah, so we look at the neo-Marxism, the existence of the neo-Marxists, yeah, and the world system theory, which more or less explains how the worlds are, in terms of countries, are dependent on each other and so on. So hold on, eh? So let me just click on this first, and then we'll find the correct video later on. Okay, hold on, I got it there. Now I got to stop share this one. And, all right. Tell me if you can't hear, so I can try to adjust the microphone on my desk. Yeah. Boleh dengar kan?
Tak, Prof.
Tak boleh dengar.
Ya.
Wow. Let me see. How do I do that? Jam, ah. The volume. sophisticated and modern theory. Is that okay?
Ya.
All right. Okay.
Oke, sudah.
Okay, we start all over again.
Tiada sound lah, Prof. Tiada bunyi.
Sorry?
Tiada bunyi. Tiada sound.
Ya enggak?
Ya.
Tapi macam ada. Sekejap, aduh, this. Still no?
Tadi ada sekejap tapi tak clear sangat.
Oh,
Ini dah
iya.
hilang dah suara dia.
Okay, I was just wondering why. Yeah. Why do I?
Doctor.
Yeah.
Prof, actually we got the slides, so we can open the video by the own and see it for
Okay.
10 minutes.
Okay.
After
Then,
10 minutes,
we just, yeah, you can do that, or you can skip this one. You can see it later. Can you?
I can also.
And then I'll let you do that later on. Yeah. There must be a way. I learned how to do this before, but I've already forgotten how to do this. Yeah. So. Okay. How do I do that? It works and didn't work. Kan? Sekejap jadi, sekejap tak jadi.
Ya, Prof.
Is that okay?
Ya, tapi tak clear.
Tapi tak clear sangat, Doktor. Tak
Boleh dengar.
Okay, tapi boleh
Okey lah, Prof.
boleh baca kah?
Ya.
ya boleh baca doktor.
Okay,
Novel.
dia punya apa nama? Is not British, not American, so dia punya pronunciation mungkin ada lain sikit lah, ya. Okay.
Oke, Prof.
Okay. Alright. Okay. Again, checking. Boleh dengar sikit ke? Dengar banyak? Tak dengar langsung?
Sorry, Prof, tak dengar.
Tak dengar langsung, eh? Okay.
Ya, tak dengar.
Tak apa. Let me just explain a little bit there. So the neo-Marxism punya tu is more like, it's not so much about what happened in the country, but rather what happened between countries. Yeah, that the developed countries exploited poorer countries or poorer states. Yeah, or group of states. So according to the neo-Marxism, one of which is the world system theory, for example, that the world is divided into rich and poor countries, and then and also capitalist and non-capitalist countries as well. All right. So basically, it was looking at that. Yeah, the inequality in the world, exploitation by one country or one dominant country over another. Okay. So then okay. So let me just skip this one. Tak payah nak ni. I think you can watch it on your own from your device. Yeah. We'll just skip this one because it's not working quite well. All right. So let me skip this and then continue with my lecture. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. Okay. Ya. Cari tadi mana? Not my. Okay. Actually, the other one is about the same lah. Kenapa ini? Now it picks my voice, but the system doesn't. This one is also the same thing. It's so talking about. Let me see. Try this one. Try this one. Kalau tak boleh jadi, then you can let me know. What is the world system approach or world system theory? Sorry, boleh dengar ke tadi?
Sekejap dengar, sekejap tak nak tu.
Iya kah?
Kuat lepas tu perlahan. Kuat lepas tu perlahan.
Oh iya, macam mana benar teknologi ni? I don't know. Hold on, let try again. Okay. Course, there are multiple cultural systems coexisting in the world.
Ada dengar ada, Prof?
Ya, ada.
Ada.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I solved the problem already. All right. Let's start all over again, yeah? Because I think this is quite interesting. So I don't want you to miss this. Yeah.
Prof, sorry Prof. Tapi Prof,
Sekejap. Now sekarang tak ada bunyi.
sebab Prof muid dia punya suara dekat.
Oh, sorry. True. Nah, okay. I've been
Okay,
pressing too
Prof
many.
bagi volume up sikit.
Okay, sekarang boleh.
Dia namanya bodoh, bodoh.
Eh,
Okay, Prof bagi volume up sikit dia punya volume.
okay, okay.
Okay. Okay. Dah hilang lagi, Prof. Tak ada suara dah.
Let me stop. Ada suara tak?
Ada, Prof. Dah
Boleh
hilang
dengar?
suara.
Clear?
Tak ada suara.
Hah, tak. Semua tak ada suara ke atau satu dua orang tak ada suara?
I think
Ada semua, Prof.
Nah,
Ya.
ya.
Suara, Prof.
Hah? Kejap, saya balik.
Tidak suara, tidak suara.
Tadi elok. Sekarang. Maybe. Kejap, maybe this one. No sound? Ada bunyi? Tak ada?
Tak ada bunyi.
Ada, Prof.
Ada bunyi. Ini macam mana ni? Sorry about that. Okay. Speaker, select speaker. System. Okay, kejap. Sound system. Try to set the speaker. Audio. Settings. Ya, saya set dulu ya. Mic, oke. Boleh dengar kan? Recording system, oke. Test speaker. Automatic adjustment. Halo, testing. Alright. Testing, boleh dengar?
Okay, this time suara Prof yang tak clear.
Okay.
Suara Prof tenggelam.
This one okay? Was it okay? No?
Still not clear, Prof.
Okay.
No.
Never mind. I'll
Ya, Prof.
let you. I'll let you watch the video on your own time and try to understand lah. Yeah. I will also talk about this world system later on. Yeah, as a theory as well. Yeah. But I thought this is quite a good lecture, a recorded lecture. But from the perspective of the international relation, yeah, international relation. Okay, let's quit that one. Then, yeah, stop share and share balik. Boleh nampak nih slide kita?
Boleh, Prof.
Boleh, Prof.
Boleh ya.
Boleh.
Okay, so let me continue with the class. All right, so one of the school of thoughts, is not the structuralist school of thought, structuralist school of thought ini believe in the approach which consider the differences among countries, structural differences among countries, So the main idea of this structuralist approach mainly comes from the Argentine central banker, and also the first executive director, economic commissions of Latin America, Paul Prebisch, and also a Brazilian economist by the name of Celso Furtado. Yeah. So according to this idea, or the structuralist idea, by defining the world into two broad divisions, yeah, based mainly by on the extent of development, capitalist development. In other words, how far capitalism works in that particular country. So it's divided into two divisions, yeah, of all countries in the world, classified into two divisions, the core ataupun the center, and the periphery, ya, yang di tepi-tepi itulah, ya. So Prebisch and Furtado explained that the relationship between the developed and the developing countries, ya. So relationship between hubungan antara negara yang sudah maju dengan negara yang membangun ataupun sedang membangun, ya. Right. So they showed that the experience in Latin America in particular, due to the differences or the unequal relationship, the price mechanisms, for example, fail. Yeah, price mechanism failed to explain the differences ataupun the disequilibria, which is supposed to be explained by the market itself. Jadi doesn't quite work as expected. Yeah. So they were referring to the conclusion by Hans Singer and also Prebisch. They brought the idea of declining terms of trade, ya, declining terms of trade ataupun perdagangan di antara negara yang sedang membangun, ya, negara developing countries, ya, in the international exchange. So according to them, we must break. It has the unequal terms of trade need to be broken. Yeah, diputuskan, in other words. Yeah, breaking the unequal terms of trade needs rapid development. Yeah, which is possible only through rapid industrialization. Jadi mereka mengatakan bahwa they need to develop fast through industrialization, right? So that the unequal terms of trade tadi boleh putuskan ataupun the breaking that terms of trade between developing and developed countries. Okay, so and since the market doesn't perform properly in the developing countries, so one way to do that is to for the government to play its role, yeah, by taking steps towards industrialization. Jadi, so according to Prebisch and Furtado and also Singer, government needs to play its role unlike in a real capitalist society. Yeah, so this sort of industrialization is often named as import substitution industrialization ataupun ISI. Yeah, import substituting industrialization. In other words, what it does is you substitute the import of foreign inputs and so on by using local product or local input, in other words, yeah. Instead of importing those parts, for example, input from the developed countries, the developing countries can start the industrialization process, taking advantage of the local inputs, yeah, or resources, yang ada di negara berkenaan. Okay, so the essential and realistic assumption of structuralism here is that the market in developing countries, unlike in the developed countries, it doesn't quite work properly, particularly the food and labor market. So the state or the government has a role rather, bukan role lah, role to play to promote, a role to play to promoting manufacturing industries. Jadi perlu bantuan, perlu in government intervention to promote manufacturing industries diadakan di negara berkenaan. So, and this is we have looked at Keynesian theory previously. This one differs from the Keynesian, and that the structuralist school of thought ini believe that the state or the government should ensure long-term economic growth rather than short-term stability. Jadi perlu bantuan, perlu intervention from the government for long-term economic growth. Okay. Now, so the basis of the analysis is the International Division of Labor, where the co-developed countries, negara yang sudah maju sebagai core tadi, sebagai center, productivities in those sectors are equally high, unlike in the underdeveloped countries ataupun underdeveloped periphery or peripheral countries, where the primary export sectors are comparatively highly productive, with having a strong labor union, monopoly of power in manufacturing sectors, and also the existence of large groups of people out of the market who live at subsistence level, and the wealth are concentrated to small group of people. And that's the thing. I mean, the tendency for small group of people to control the production, also the market. Okay, so the wealth are concentrated to a small group of people who mainly spend the money for foreign luxury goods. Itu, in other words, they don't reinvest the money for development, so that there'll be employment and so on. But according to this structuralist school of thought ataupun approach ini, wang boleh they can have profit, they can have benefits, but money earned are most likely spent on luxury goods rather than invested. So this dualism, according to them, is not a natural process, but rather it is a colonial heritage. Yang merupakan satu heritage which is tied to colonialism. So it's colonial heritage which leads to a structural ataupun non-market problem lah. So it's not a problem of market, but rather the structural problem. So it can't be removed by the market mechanism alone. Sebab dalam capitalism, it's the market that plays the role. But the problem with what is happening in the less developed countries is that, according to these theories, mereka mengatakan bahwa the existence of the colonialism ataupun colonial heritage tadi leads to a structural problem, masalah di antara negara yang sudah maju dengan negara yang kurang maju. So it's not a market problem. Right, so the peripheries di sini merujuk kepada negara yang sedang membangun atau developing countries. So they can't go for technical or technological innovation. Sebab apa? Sebab they don't have the means. They don't have the capital. They don't have the money for innovation. because of their poor economic conditions, right? So because of that, they are dependent on the centers or the core, core ataupun centers, which is the developed countries lah, for their production technologies. Jadi bergantung pada negara maju untuk teknologi berkenaan. Right? So the structural school would argue that by declining peripheral term of trade, ini they propose a solution more or less, solution ataupun strategi. So declining the peripheral term of trade, free trade, international division level would benefit the core and worsen the peripheries. Jadi it doesn't help the less developed countries overall. Yeah. So the trade between countries, mainly between developed and less developed countries, is benefiting the developed countries ataupun the core countries tadi. Yeah. So because of the terms of trade, terms of trade itu menjebelahi negara yang telah membangun rather than the poor countries. Okay, so it really make it worse, rather, make the situation even worse. Okay, so that's the apa nama itu berkenaan dengan the structural. Jadi structure di sini adalah merupakan structure tadi adalah struktur yang ada di negara tersebut, negara membangun dan negara yang kurang membangun. Now, the second school of thought or set of theories, if you will, is the dependency theory ataupun school of thought. Yeah, this mainly comes from the critic of structuralism yang tak setuju dengan pendapat the structuralist approach tadi, right? And also with the influence of U.S. monopoly capital school as well. So it was developed in the 1960s and 1970s by Andre Gunda Frank, for example, Marini, Henrik Cardozo, Amin ataupun Samir Amin, and also Emmanuel Wallenstein. And actually this is highlighted in the video that I wanted to share with you earlier on, but I couldn't do that. Right? So much like the structuralist school of thought juga, the dependency school of thought also divide the world into two parts, dua bahagian, So so the core idea dependency theory is as peripheral economies produce and export primary goods. Jadi maksudnya peripheral economies ini adalah negara yang sedang membangun, they produce and also they export primary goods, mainly raw products. For example, rubber, agriculture goods and so on, and they are dependent on the central core countries ataupun the developed countries, and many of these core countries were formerly the colonizer, negara yang pernah menjajah. Okay, dan peripheral economies of countries ni or state ini lebih kepada kebanyakannya negara yang pernah dijajah, being colonized in the past. Alright, so as peripheral economies produce and export primary goods and dependent on central core countries for raw materials, technology, and luxury imports, so the flow of resources will take place from the periphery ataupun satellites tadi to a more to the core ataupun the metropolis. Right, so resources flowing from the periphery kepada metropolis. Right? So through this process, the poor countries and the rich countries become enriched pada ataupun jurang perbezaan itu makin bertambah, increasing the gap between the two parts, poor countries, rich countries, and thus further deteriorate the condition, ya, menyebabkan keadaan semakin lebih teruk lagi, right? So if you look at the this dependency school of thought tadi, according to them, it is not possible to be developed, yeah, for these poor countries, following the prescription of the modernization theory, which doesn't consider the unique feature of underdevelopment created in periphery. Jadi, remember, modernization theory talks about that a country must become modernized through process of industrialization, right? But that, according to this dependency theory, is not really solving the problem because of the unique characteristics of the underdeveloped nations, yeah, who are in their periphery, the disadvantage, yeah. So the only possible way to develop, ya, bagi negara periphery tadi ataupun negara yang sedang membangun, ya, is to break the dependency. Jadi that's the gist of this dependency theory tadi lah, or dependency school of thought tadi, ya. Break the dependency, break the dependence on the developed country, ya. Breaking the dependency relation by cutting all relation, including trade in particular, yeah, with the core capitalist countries, and define your own way of development, which is through socialism. Jadi, so they encourage socialism, their own way. Yeah, socialism is more like encourage equality lah within the country. So break away from that dependence on developed ataupun core countries, right? So these are the forms of dependence between the developing and the or developing ataupun peripheral state or countries and the developed ataupun the core countries tadi, ya. One form of dependency is the related to colonialism, which is known as colonial dependence. In other words, the commercial, the financial capital of the dominant country, formerly the colonizer, negara penjajah, in alliance with the colonial state. Colonial state ini adalah negara yang pernah dijajah ataupun dijajah. So they work with the colonial state and they monopolize the control of land, yeah, mines, even human resources, including slave, serf, and so on that, yeah, and also export of gold, silver, tropical products from the colonized country. Okay, so that is the main reason behind colonization or colonialism in the past. So that these countries, from mainly Western countries, colonize other countries of the world, in Africa, in South America, and also in Asia, and so on, with the idea of extracting, exporting gold and all that, silver and whatever, all these valuable metals and all that, and also other products. Then in Africa, it includes the human trafficking or slave and all that. Yeah. Okay, that's a form of colonial dependence. The other form of dependency is what is classified as the financial industrial dependence. Okay, so the economies of the dependent countries here refers to the peripheries ataupun negara yang kurang membangun ataupun sedang membangun. Okay, so economies of these dependent countries are then centered upon the export of raw materials. Okay, so that is what is being traded ataupun yang di ekspor ya oleh negara yang sedang membangun, mainly raw materials. Ini termasuk agriculture products ya, raw materials, maksud timber for example, apa lagi, minerals, oil ya, we're talking about oil apa nama ni, minyak mentah ya, minyak mentah, which are exported, and this minyak mentah ni ataupun raw oil ni diekspor ke negara yang sudah maju, kemudian diproses and becomes apa nama, minyak yang kita gunakan sekarang ini ya, gasoline, the diesel and so on ya, and that are being sold back ya, dijual balik ke negara yang mengeluarkan minyak tersebut di antara negara yang membelilah ya, for the consumption of European countries. Jadi raw materials, products are consumed by the European countries, right? So and also apa nama ni, pembelian ataupun harganya murah ya bagi negara yang sudah membangun ya. The third dependency is the technological industrial dependency, where especially after the World War II era, when industrial development began to take place in many of the underdeveloped or developing countries, so the technology and also the investment, capital, so on, and technology termasuk apa nama tu, the expatriates and so on comes from the developed countries. Okay, so that comes at a cost to the developing countries. All right, so dependence on the continued dependence of the less developed countries ataupun negara yang kurang membangun ke atas negara yang sudah membangun yang mempunyai teknologi. Tapi satu perkara lah, one of the things mentioned about technology develop in the West ataupun negara yang sudah maju, kadang-kadang teknologi tersebut mungkin tak berapa sesuai ya untuk digunakan di negara yang sedang membangun. Jadi not everything that is apa nama invented ataupun dibuat di negara yang sudah maju boleh diguna ataupun readily adaptable ataupun boleh diadapted by developing countries. Okay, alright. Okay, now that's for the independent school of thought. Yeah. Let me check now. What page are we in now? Ada page number kan? Sorry. What is it? Oops. All right. Yeah, page 10. 20. Okay. Sorry, that's not where we are. We should be further up. Yep. There we are here. Okay, that's development. Okay, so that's the kind of dependency that we're talking about, yeah, bagi negara yang sedang membangun. Okay, let's look at the situation now. Negara Malaysia masih bergantung ke negara yang sudah maju ataupun tidak?
Masih.
Okay, in what form?
Ambil barang macam barang engine macam tu lah, barang bahan industri,
Okay, teknologi semua tu lah.
teknologi, ya.
Do we sell product to these countries? I mean the core countries. Like what do we export? I'm sorry, exporting lah. So export apa yang kita, what is our main product yang kita ekspor?
Minyak sawit.
Okay, palm oil, sorry. Palm oil refers to the oil. Oil palm is the plant, by the way. When you talk about oil palm, we are referring to the plant itself ataupun the crop itself. Palm oil is the product from the palm. So we export palm oil. Yes, that's a big export. Tapi apa masalah yang dihadapi kita sekarang ni? Macam-macam kan? Halangan
Ya.
pun isu berkaitan dengan ekspor ini. Negara yang especially Europe dan also Amerika, mereka mempunyai macam-macam lah alasan supaya tidak mengimport all this palm oil tadi. Nah, itu that's the kind of thing that's happening not only happening to Malaysia but also other countries juga begitu juga lah yang berlaku. Ya, so that's the form of masalah perdagangan ya yang dihadapi oleh negara yang sudah maju ataupun sedang membangun dengan negara yang sudah membangun. Okay, so ada raw materials that we produce, minyak mentah, ya, raw oil from the dari this is not palm oil, minyak mentah yang by Petronas and all that, ya, that so raw oil exported to developed countries and then processed and then become fuel ya yang boleh digunakan. Okay, dijual balik dan kita beli balik daripada mereka. Okay, we have so many other lah. Kita ada getah dan sebagainya kan, even lada hitam. Okay, tapi masalahnya the general problem is the price of these products that are being sold to ataupun exported to the developed countries, harganya taklah berapa baik sangat ya. So we are the mercy of the developed countries or the core countries today. Okay, I would like to just stop here for 5 minutes ya. We take a break and then we'll continue after that ya. Boleh ya?
Boleh.
Boleh ada.
Okay, kita berhenti sekejap ya. I didn't record. So part of this will not be recorded. My earlier lecture after the break today. All right. So those are the some of the features of underdevelopment. Yeah. So how does underdevelopment develop? So development of underdevelopment adalah merupakan the underdevelopment is actually not a natural condition, bukan keadaan natural, but an artifact ataupun kesan ya daripada long history of colonial domination in the third world country. Jadi one of the reasons for underdevelopment, in fact, a theory of underdevelopment ada kaitan dengan colonization, ya, colonial domination in the third world countries. Okay, so that effect, even until now, masih lagi kebergantungan terhadap negara yang sudah yang dahulunya colonizer, sekarang ini masih lagi kekal the kind of relationship, dependency on the developed countries. Okay, all right, so that's a condition of underdevelopment. And so the post-colonial dependency is still there, yeah, where it's a form of, in other words, it's a form of new colonization, a new colonialism, where the policies of the developed countries, the developed countries um, that will enable them to dominate the economies of their former colonies lah, ya. So dulunya negara-negara ini, negara kecil ini merupakan the colonies of the developed country. Contohnya Spain, developed country, France, Britain, and so on. Yeah, so they colonize other nations, smaller nations in the world, right? So in terms of policies, for example, disjunctive development. Disjunctive here means disconnected, disjointed, yeah, kind of development. It's not properly planned and so on, yeah. And also in terms of investment, yeah, continued investing in those countries of former colonies study, yeah, either by the government or by private individual or companies and so on, yeah. So invest in these developing countries to get profit and bring back to their for their benefit lah, keuntungan sendiri untuk negara tersebut. And also loans, yeah. So the less developed countries, the former colonies, take loans from the big countries, and sometimes the loans taken are not used properly ataupun tidak mendatangkan hasil, sehingga yang menjadikan satu masalah besar, known as debt, ya, ataupun debt crisis ataupun krisis hutang negara. Nah, krisis hutang negara ini berlaku disebabkan oleh pinjaman yang dibuat ataupun diambil dari negara besar, kemudian loan ini ataupun pinjaman ini adalah tujuan untuk membangunkan negara dari segi dilaburkan dan sebagainya. Unfortunately, many of these loans taken tak berjaya ataupun mengalami masalah, contohnya corruption and all that. So jadi wang yang sepatutnya dilaburkan, digunakan untuk tujuan pembangunan sebagainya tidak digunakan. So tidak ada hasil. Kalau tidak ada hasil, maka tidak ada sumber untuk membayar balik hutang tersebut. And that's the situation, yeah, happening to many of the poor countries, including those in Africa and also other parts of the world, right? So when it comes to crisis, a point where the country just could not pay back their loan and so on. So that is the result of mendapat pinjaman tadi lah, over still dependence on the developed countries. Yeah, this is the post-colonial dependency tadi. Alright, so the dependency, mengikut dependency theory ini, dependency is a situation in which the economy of a country, a group of countries, is conditioned by the development and expansion of another country, ya, bergantung ataupun berkaitan dengan perkembangan ataupun pembangunan di negara yang sudah membangun. Ya. So dependency is a source of underdevelopment. So in other words, dependency theory explain, ya, tentang keadaan underdevelopment, ya. The situation of underdevelopment is attributed to dependency tadi, ya, dependency on the developed countries ataupun core countries. Yeah. So the dependency is the result of the imposition of a set of external conditions on third world development, termasuk conditions of trade, ya, perdagangan, conditions of apalagi even in politics as well, ya. Jadi itu merupakan some of the terms, ya, that need to be met, and that is a form of disebabkan oleh ataupun ia berkaitan dengan dependency tadi, ya. of the third world development. Okay, so dependency theory, ya, kaitan dengan underdevelopment ataupun lack of development. Okay, so these are extra notes that I came across. Right. So, for example, the dependency theory criticize the modernization theory ataupun paradigm. This one has its origin in the Latin America, actually. Yeah. So we have seen earlier on the center versus periphery. The center here refers to the developed countries, and the periphery here refers to the developing countries. So the countries that emerged from colonialism, as we have seen earlier on, remain dependent on the core capitalism countries or capitalists, countries through the new form of economic and political dependency, according to Cardoza in his writing. Jadi continued dependence. So development is conducted in such a way as to maintain the position of dependence. Jadi so development is conducted in such a way as to maintain the position of dependence or the development of underdevelopment, according to Frank, Gunda Frank, so the American style of development programs were also criticized mainly by European theorists as serving to strengthen the exploitation of the third world. Jadi capitalism as it is, the style, their style of development programs practiced by American, to the rest of the world, for example, as a form of exploitation. Okay, so the first generation of development assistance programs would not be solution to third world underdevelopment. In fact, they are part of the problem, actually. So the system doesn't help as much as the. So this system actually just to maintain that kind of relationship that we were talking earlier on, berkenaan dengan the periphery and the core, relationship between these countries, dependency between the two groups of countries today. Okay, so according to Gunda Frank, Andre Gunda Frank, the development of underdevelopment, in the monthly review 1966, where he talks about it. So according to him, most of our theory fails to explain the structure and also development of capitalist system as a whole, and also to account for its simultaneous generation of underdevelopment in some of its parts and economic development in others. Jadi, so our past theories, our theory berkenaan dengan pembangunan, dengan structural problem and so on, has not been good enough, to explain the differences, the problems that continue to exist, particularly in the less developed countries. Okay, so in his writings, and these are quoted by later writers and all that, in his original writings, 1967 and also 1969, his argument was that the rich countries achieve growth, achieve development of growth, economic growth, by exploiting their colonies. Ini cerita yang kita dengar awal tadi lah. So they exploit their colonies and the rest of the underdeveloped world. So the metropolis ataupun the satellite relations. So metropolis di sini maksudnya the core, the core dominant countries. The satellite here adalah merupakan the periphery tadi lah, peripheries ataupun the rest of other countries. Yeah. So that kind of relationship, metropolis satellite relations are based on structural system of exploitation, structural system of exploitation, yeah, where it is assumed that the underdeveloped countries are at a stage pictured or depicted as an original stage of history that the developed countries passed long time ago. In other words, the stage where many of the some of these countries are still existing, ya, negara yang sedang membangun adalah merupakan juga satu keadaan yang pernah dilalui oleh negara yang sudah membangun sekarang ini. So they have passed through that period. Yeah. Historical research also demonstrate that contemporary underdevelopment is in a large part the historical product of past and continuing economic and other relation between the satellite underdeveloped and the metropolis developed countries. Okay. Jadi orang yang membuat kajian history ini juga menunjukkan bahawa keadaan kurang membangun di beberapa buah negara di dunia ini adalah berkaitan dengan history ataupun sejarah yang lampau, ya, product of past continuing economic and other relations, ya, yaitu hubungan di antara negara sudah maju dengan negara kurang membangun tadi. Okay, so the metropolis ataupun metropolis satellite relations ni, core and periphery relation, ya, is where once the goods in this region specialize, were no longer being produced, these countries would then be abandoned. Jadi kalau tak ada lagi, ya, when there's nothing else they can extract, for example, from that country, so they abandon the country. Yeah, no more relationship with these unfortunate poor countries. So that will limit their development. Kalau dah habis benda yang mereka mahu, maka mereka tinggalkan. Itu mengikut that theory, metropolis satellite relation tadi. Okay, so the dependency theory is the idea that resources will flow from the periphery countries ataupun countries which are poor, less developed country, to a core ataupun the wealthy country, wealthy states. We can look at from country to country. We can even look at from the perspective of states as well. Yeah, but we're talking about between countries, yeah, rich and poor countries. So in the process, yeah, in the process, the resources will enrich the wealthy country or the rich country at the expense of the former. Jadi itulah the main idea behind this dependency theory, yaitu kebergantungan negara-negara yang sedang membangun terhadap negara yang sudah membangun, and the flow resources, ya, sumber-sumber daripada negara yang kurang membangun ataupun poor countries, underdeveloped state, kepada negara yang sudah membangun, and in the process will enrich them, ya, at the expense of former country, of the less developed countries. And this diagram here shows the relationship between the periphery and the core. So the periphery, these periphery countries, negara yang kurang membangun, they supply the resources kepada the core countries ataupun developed countries. And these resources are mainly raw materials tadi, ya, akan diproses and then jadi barang, ya, goods, manufactured goods, which are then sold to not only the periphery but also the semi-periphery countries. Right? The same thing also from the semi-periphery masuk digunakan oleh periphery, and then juga dijual balik kepada negara within the semi-periphery area. Jadi that's how relationship between the periphery and the core, the rich country, poor countries, structural as well as the dependency school of thought tadi, ya. Jadi ini yang dikatakan yang berlaku, right? So they buy the resources dengan harga yang murah, and then they manufacture goods, jual dengan harga mahal sebagai contoh, ya. So definitely they make profit lah, from that process tadi. Okay, so ini satu contoh yang terdapat dalam analisis yang dibuat oleh Frank guna Frank tadi, and which was cited by Hyde and Timmons in 2007. Case studies of the economic and social histories of Chile and Brazil. Okay, this is on this side is the map of Brazil with the various state, ataupun regions in the Brazil. So all these eastern states, these are rich regions actually, the more developed regions of Brazil. The more you go to the interior, the less developed it is. Jadi according to the writings here, the metropolis satellite relations are not limited to imperial or international level alone. Jadi this is another just to show that the relationship between periphery dengan core tadilah, the issue ataupun metropolis dengan satellite relation tadi. So it's not only between countries, but the very economic, political, and social life of Latin American colonies, for example, where the history of Brazil is as a good example, a clearest case of both national and also regional development of underdevelopment. Jadi the issue of national and regional development of underdevelopment. Some parts are really underdeveloped, some parts are better developed. Okay. So the expansion of the world economy since the beginning of the 16th century, according to Frank, successively converted the northeast, which is this part, the Minas Gerais area, which is this area, right? The north and the center south, RJSP, around this area, Sao Paulo and all that, into export economies. So this region here becomes an export economies, right? And incorporated them into the development of the capitalist system. Jadi ini masuk dalam sistem kapitalis tadi, So they are faster developed than the other parts of Brazil. Itu yang dimaksudkan sini, right? So Andre Gonda Frank asserts that Latin American Latin America experiences its highest rates of industrialization during the period between the end of World War I and the beginning of World War II, right? The rates of industrialization and modernization, if you will, So as a case study, Frank focuses on the economy of Brazil and describes how its capital, Sao Paulo, and by the way, I'll show you where Sao Paulo is. Sao Paulo is here, down here. This is where Sao Paulo is, capital of Brazil. So Sao Paulo became one of the largest and most developed industrial hubs in the Latin America. Not bukan saja Brazil, but also in other Latin American states. Okay. Nevertheless, despite the rapid development of Brazil, Frank argues that Brazil will not break out of the cycle of underdevelopment. It will not break the cycle of underdevelopment due to its continued reliance on the more developed nations as a way to export its resources. Jadi dia Brazil depends mainly the eastern state tadi, they exports the resources, yeah, to the developed nation. So that kind of relationship is still continued, yeah, until today. So the cycle tu masih, yeah, cycle of underdevelopment is still there. They couldn't break that kind of relationship of metropolis and satellite tadi, yeah. Okay, all right. So also this is based on Cardozo punya idea, other than Frank's analysis. Also another person, Cardozo, also made another analysis. Yeah, this is also found in Haidt and Timmons' writing. So the attempts to advance Frank's analysis study, stating that there's going to be continued dependence on the developed core tadi, stating that it should not be assumed that imperialism has created a lack of dynamism in dependent economies. Jadi tidak bermaksud imperialism atau capitalism tadi lack in dynamic, yeah, in the dependent economies. So in some specific situation, for example, it is possible for us to expect development and also dependency at the same time. Yeah, the unequal trade relations, for example, inequality among nations and economies resulted from imperialism's development to the extent that import of raw materials, right, import of raw materials by the developed nations and export of manufactured goods by the developed nation to the rest of the world were the basis for the imperialist colonial relationship. Yeah, imperialist colonial relationship. So this type of economic expansion reinforced the colonial link through wars, repression, subjection of peoples that previously were culturally independent and structurally didn't have links with Western world. Jadi ini bagi negara yang tidak ada kaitan dulu dengan apa nama colonialism so on, this is a new form, yeah, new form of dependency, yeah, new form of that's why it's called a neo-colonialism, yeah, colonialism. Okay, termasuk negara di Afrika dan juga Asia. Right, so there is new form of economic dependency where foreign investment is moving from not just oil and raw materials in the direction of industrial sectors, yeah, but it is moving to things like having a joint venture enterprise, yeah, joint venture enterprise, including local state capital, private, national, and monopoly international investment. So away from the importation of raw materials and natural resources and all that, right? So this is a new form, yeah, right? Joint venture tadi, enterprises. So local elites tadi adalah were identified also as agents. Jadi dalam sebuah negara ada grup-grup lah, ya, elite, ya, local elite, group of people who are more wealthier and have the means. So these local elites were identified and also serve as agents of dependency and underdevelopment. Jadi di dalam negara itu sendiri pun ada agen yang membantu yang akan mengekalkan, ya, that dependency and continued underdevelopment of the country. So, okay, so that's the situation, ya, berkenaan dengan apa yang berlaku di South America, but also happening in some other parts of the world as well. Yeah. Right. So beyond development and post-development, development in since the 1980s. Yeah. So before 1980s, things were quite different, but is it really different after the 1980s? Right. So what happened was a lot of these countries are borrowing money from the developed countries for the purpose of development to achieve modernization. Yeah. So the debt of poor nations and neoliberal forms of development occurred. Yeah, since the 1980s. Heavy borrowing by poor countries. Yeah. Foreign nations took on debts in the 1960s, 1970s, with the aim of trying to build their industrial sectors, industrialization, yeah, and also building infrastructure, ports, airports, roads, and so on and so forth, and also to catch up with the developed nation ataupun core nations, right? So the loans permitted them to finally do some kind of development planning. However, the nations became more and more in debt as they borrowed and they could not pay. So they try to cover or they try to pay for the old debt, pinjam baru untuk bayar hutang dahulu. So ini gali punya gali sampai lubang jadi besar. Jadi tak boleh nak ditimbuskan. Ya. So becomes here and it becomes a crisis, right? So they had to secure more loans, and in exchange for these loans, they had to submit to a sweeping program of cuts in food, in housing, in privatization of state companies, and so on. So these are the results of that. Peters, Nedevin Peters, in 2007, for example, in his writing underlines that there has been a shift from the structuralist perspective seen early on development towards an institutional and agency-oriented views. Yeah, so kepada institutional and agency-oriented views. So from 1980s onward, both the modernization or the neo-Marxist dependency theories started to lose out in terms of their explanatory power. Jadi semakin berkurangan dari segi their relevance in explaining why there is lack of development in the less developed countries. Right. Okay, so those are some of the writings that we can be found in terms of the issue of dependency, yeah, even until after the 1980s, it still goes on, ya, benda yang kebergantungan terhadap negara yang sudah membangun, right? Okay, so that's the some of the theories and some of the writings with regard to the theory of development or lack of development in some of these countries today. Now, the rest are some of the additional notes which I have put up untuk dibaca lah, baik berkenaan dengan isu pembangunan dan kurangnya pembangunan ataupun under development. Okay, for example, you can find here in this additional notes I've attached some definitions of development, right? Not just about economic development, but also in terms of other components as well, right? So for some people, development also suggests, for example, not only changes in economy, but also in terms of their traditional social, cultural, political structures as well, yeah, structural struktur politik, struktur sosial dan sebagainya. So as to resemble more nearly those displayed in countries and economies deemed advanced. Jadi dari segi culture, dari segi social, dari segi political ideology, di pembangunan itu merupakan satu cara untuk ataupun more or less mengikut apa yang berlaku di negara yang sudah maju, and mostly, for example, the US, for example, ya, the Western countries, ya, nilai-nilai yang ada di ataupun budaya negara tersebut. Okay, so but for others, the concept of development and underdevelopment were post-War II inventions of Western culture. Jadi merupakan the introduction of Western culture, yeah, where countries were classified by degree to which they conform to Western standard of wealth, Western standard of well-being, and the Western standard of achievement. Jadi kalau negara-negara ini dapat mencapai, ya, or conform, mengikut, ya, budaya Barat tersebut, maka negara tersebut boleh dikatakan mencapai pembangunan. Kalau tidak, ianya di label as under development. Yeah. Okay, so many of the attributes of development we have seen earlier on, yeah, under its usual economic definition can be quantified. Ya, boleh dihitung, quantified by reference to statistics. For example, we can quantify in terms of national production. Ya, berapa production, contohnya GNP, GDP, sebagainya. Ya, and per capita income that we can quantify. Energy consumption, for example, boleh kita quantify. Levels of nutrition, labor force participation and characteristics, and all those that are easily quantifiable. Yeah. So these variables might calibrate the scale of achievement. For example, such a scale would reveal the countries lie along a continuum, yeah, from least developed to most developed, yeah, in terms of technology, to the most developed in those and similar characteristics. Jadi, so the development can be measured in along a continuum, maksudnya dalam satu continuum. So a country may, each country or any country can fall at any point in the continuum tadi, ya, daripada from the very least developed to the most developed, ya. Okay, so itu pembangunan. Dari segi underdevelopment pula, ya, underdevelopment di sini suggest that the desirability of applying additional capital, labor, technology to the resource base of an area to permit the present population to improve its material well-being, right? So more refined subdivisions of development have been introduced, including such relative terms as moderately least or least developed countries. Jadi terminologi itu yang mengatakan developed and less developed itu is too terlampau general in a way, yeah. Because if you look at the level of if we use a continuum tadi, yeah, so any country can fall along that line. So it doesn't have to be developed and less developed. So there may be to some degree developed and to a certain degree less developed. Okay, so other terms yang digunakan contohnya the newly industrialized countries, for example, ataupun newly industrializing countries would refer to those countries yang dahulunya, contohnya Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, right? And also I think it was Argentina or something like that. These are another category of set of countries which falls within the continuum tadi towards the more developed far end of it. Yeah? And then we have the middle income countries. Yeah, have also been employed. Yeah, to describe the level of development ataupun state development in these countries. Right. So more recently, emerging economy has become a common designation, providing a more positive image than underdeveloped. Jadi this is another term, yeah, to describe because when you use the word underdeveloped, it has a negative connotation. Yeah. So emerging economy merujuk kepada negara-negara tersebut, but it's a better term. It's a better, a more positive image. Yeah? In other words, it's a dynamic thing. In other words, country is still in the process of improving. Yeah. So the third world, another term yang juga pernah dan saya juga pernah pakai adalah third world countries. Ya, merujuk kepada negara yang kurang membangun ataupun sedang membangun. So third world countries is also a term used applied to the developed countries as a group, group of countries. And this is used to be a political designation for nations which are not formally aligned with the first world ataupun the capitalist ataupun first world tadilah. So then there is this. The second world refers to Russia actually, by the way. So the first world, industrialized countries. The second world are the Soviet Union, and the third world are other countries in the world, which are not industrialized countries. Also, there is a fourth world, but I seldom come across this fourth world. It's also a term which may differentiate between among the developing countries. Mungkin ada negara-negara yang sangat kurang membangun, or the least developed state. Jadi this is how the categorization of the degree of development in the different countries of the world. Okay. Jadi untuk mengukur pembangunan ini, one of the most common one, is to use the GDP ataupun gross domestic product, which is the total market value of all goods and services produced annually, and the measure is secara tahunan, produced annually within the borders of a country, within the country actually. So gross domestic product, regardless of the owner of the enterprise ataupun industri sebagainya. So anything that is produced in the country, for example, in Sarawak or in Malaysia, that becomes the gross domestic product. That's one of the measurement of development. Okay, so you could see people comparing GDP of countries in Africa, countries in US, in Europe, Asia dan sebagainya, based on GDP. So the higher the GDP is, the better more developed country is, in terms of economy. And then the other alternative is the gross national income, or GNP. The GNP here refers to the income ataupun the portion which is earned by the citizens of the country. Maksudnya di sini adalah kalau dalam gross domestic product tadi is all the value of goods produced by that country A, for example. Tetapi dalam yang country A yang tadi mungkin banyak pelabur luar negara and so on, owners of the industries are foreigners and so on. Jadi sebahagian besarnya mungkin bawa balik, dikeluarkan daripada negara tersebut because it belongs to foreigners. Tapi GNP di sini, or GNI, or GNP di sini merupakan that portion which earned by the people of the country, orang dalam negara tersebut. Mostly melalui pekerjaan, employment, gaji dan sebagainya. Right. So to make the values comparable, there are 3 adjustments that needs to be made to the gross national income tadi. First, sebab kita nak buat perbandingan, ya, nak buat perbandingannya susah. Kalau kita negara satu kita gunakan sebagai contoh lah, kita gunakan rupiah, satu lagi menggunakan apa nama tu, what do you call? Kalau Indonesia rupiah, kalau di India apa? Kalau di Malaysia kita guna ringgit, ya.
Kalau India rupees.
Rupees, rupiah dengan rupiah itu macam bunyi sama aja.
Rupee.
I know, rupee, but yeah, rupee and rupiah in Indonesia. So kalau kita compare berdasarkan itu susah sikit, ya. So we need to convert it to a standardized monetary unit lah, ya. So what we do is we convert the US dollar is the one that is used all over the world now. We convert each country's currency into a single measure, typically US dollar equivalents lah, right? So that we can compare. So first, that's first step. Second step is we divide by the number of people in the country to get the GNI per capita ataupun gross national income per capita berdasarkan kepada US dollar, ya, bukan berdasar kepada rupiah ataupun rupiah, ya, ataupun Malaysian ringgit, ya. It has to be a standard currency. Yang kedua, ya, so first of all convert to US dollar ataupun satu sama tak dolar ataupun sekarang ni kita boleh pakai maybe euro ke apa kan, ya, ataupun Japanese yen ke apa kan, ya, but the most common one is US dollar. That's it for the world, ya. Dan yang ketiganya, lepas kita bagi dengan the total number of people in the country, then the third one we note the market currency exchange rates, ya. Fluctuate with business cycle and trading patterns and do not necessarily correspond to the prices in a particular country. Jadi exchange rate-nya berubah. Okay, kadang-kadang tinggi, kadang-kadang rendah. So these are the process, yeah, to make sure that we are making a more sensible, yeah, comparison between gross national income of countries in the world. Okay, jadi just to share with you, the richest country in the world at the moment is still US. Tetapi with gross national, gross national income ataupun per person per capita, ya, national income per capita, for example, of course, is higher in US. Because their number of population is smaller than China, for example. Yeah, so China is second in terms of the volume, yeah, in terms of income, yeah, GDP. Tetapi oleh kerana the number of people or the size population of China is so huge, 20% of the world populations are living in China, maka per capita, yeah, per capita income is much smaller. Right? In other words, purata pendapatan untuk seorang penduduk di China masih lagi rendah. Ya, itu just looking at the comparison between countries. Okay, another thing is purchasing power parity. In other words, how much does that money, what can you buy with the money? That's what it means, yeah, purchasing power parity. Is often used, yeah, applied to the GNI to account for price differences. Okay, so contohnya, even though the GNI ataupun gross national income ataupun gross income per capita in US is high, tetapi dari segi purchasing power parity mungkin rendah ya, sebab harga barang mahal sebagai contoh dibandingkan dengan di negara lain di mana harga barang mungkin murah ya. Right, so even after applying the purchasing power parity correction, it still remains difficult to compare personal income figures across national borders. In fact, it's very difficult. Yeah. So, for example, the personal income in Sweden are taxed at much higher rates than in US. Jadi taxnya ataupun cukainya sangat-sangat tinggi. Yeah. So that's the personal income. Tetapi the social welfare programs adalah yang terbaik, ya, sangat baik. Where the higher education, medicine, obat-obatan receive greater central governmental funding in Sweden. Jadi maksudnya they get funded by the government, that's free education, for example, in Denmark and so on. Yeah, compared to US, you have to pay quite high for your education and so on, even health services. So, jadi those are things. Yeah. So residents of higher, another case, residents of higher latitudes, for example, must buy fuel and heavy clothing, which are not necessary in tropical climate. Jadi tak perlu, benda ni. So we don't have to purchase this good. We don't have to have, for example, money to be spent on buying winter clothing or dan sebagainya. Kita tak perlu, right? So itu is more or less offset, ya. Some of the results of maybe lower GNI, yeah, in these countries, yeah, compared to the temperate regions, for example. Okay. All right. The other things is with regard to some of the explanation for underdevelopment. We've seen earlier on physical geography, for example, maybe part of the natural things that happen that has caused underdevelopment in certain part of the world. Yeah, contohnya. Development is characteristics of the rich north, mid-latitude ke atas, ya, temperate region. If you look at Europe and so on, ya, depend those are countries above the equatorial lines ataupun equator. While poverty and development seems to be in the tropical regions of the world. Dan ini mengikut physical geography lah. Mungkin ada kaitan dengan keadaan panas, hujan, tanah dan sebagainya. So tropical regions face the major ecological handicaps of low agricultural productivity, challenging soil conditions, and substantially higher incidence of plant, animal, and human disease. Jadi ini another explanation for underdevelopment or lack of development in the tropical regions. Yeah. Okay. So many of the poor nations of the south lie partially or wholly within the altitudes or at temperate elevations. Contohnya Afghanistan, North Korea, Mongolia, and some of these example was Equatorial Singapore, Malaysia. Dibandingkan negara tersebut, we are considered as more prosperous. Yeah. So in other words, according to this group, ya, yang melihat kepada keadaan physical geography ini, mereka mengatakan location of the country matters. It is not destiny. Yeah, jadi bukan destiny. You can do something about that as well. All right. So there is the modernization theory. I think we have learned about this earlier on. The modernization theory begins by arranging all societies on a continuum from traditional to a modern country. Jadi, according to this theory, development is the logical progression from traditional to modern as societies adopt characteristic of advanced societies. Jadi, Dianya agak bias lah, agak bias karena ukurannya ataupun standarnya telah ditetapkan oleh Western countries, developed industrialized countries. Yeah. So characteristic advanced countries or societies where there's advanced technology, urbanization, people are more living in the urban areas, high per capita incomes, high quality of life, or completed demographic transition. Demographic transition di sini maksudnya from high birth rate, high death rate to low birth rate, low death rates. And that's these countries, developed countries, has already gone through that stage, and now they are at the end of the demographic transition. Individualism, democracy, and so on, we have seen earlier on kan. Jadi mengikut teori ini, sebuah negara itu will be moving from one end to the other, from the traditional to the modern. Ya, so mengikut apa yang telah dicapai oleh negara yang sudah maju. Right, so these are the things. Right, then we have seen also this one, dependency theory. I don't have to go through this. I've seen this earlier on. I've discussed quite at length, yeah, on this. Then just a little bit more on the world system theory berkenaan dengan core periphery tadi, ya, model di mana di negara dunia ini boleh dibagikan kepada the core countries, the peripheral countries lah, ya. So on the international scene, core peripheral contrasts discern between particularly Western Europe, Japan, and the United States as considered as the core, ya, negara yang maju lah, and the least developed countries on the which lies on the periphery, ataupun negara yang kurang membangun. So jadi kita lihat awal tadi, core countries controls the key high level functions in the global economy, ya, global economy. Termasuk corporate headquarters, diletakkan di US, financial centers, all those are in the developed countries. So this theory takes account ataupun acknowledges that countries can shift from being peripheral position to a core position. All right. Good examples that is Singapore. I think Singapore now is probably already come to a stage where they can be considered, yeah, sebagai core position dibandingkan dengan keadaan masa dahulu lah. Right? Malaysia belum lagi, kita masih banyak bergantung kepada negara yang sudah. Although in some instances we do provide assistance to the poorer countries than us, yeah, we have that cases. Kita bagi bantuan, kita bagi investment in other less developed countries as well. So that's, I think, if you can combine the world system theory ini dengan teori yang lain tadi, ya, di mana we can see it from the continuum kind of situation, yeah, where a country can be present at any place or any point along the continuum, and then also maybe in the past a country may have been on the periphery but moving towards the core, right? Itu world system. Jadi itu sajalah. As I said, these are extra notes yang kamu boleh baca bandingkan dengan some of the notes I prepared earlier. Okay, so if you want to know more about this, you can always read, yeah, more on the world system theory, dependency theory, particularly, yeah, just to know more about those theory, yeah, and how it will affect development or influence development in the developed or developing countries, particularly. Alright, so itu saja yang saya nak sampaikan. Ada soalan kah?
Saya ada.
Okay, it has been a long lecture, 2 jam setengah, panjang sangat ya. Tak ada komen, soalan ke apa kah? I'll take question kalau ada.
So far no, dokter.
Oke, tak ada. Oke, kalau tidak ada, setakat ini saja untuk hari ini ya. Dan kita jumpa lagi pada minggu hadapan. Next week, ya.
Terima kasih dokter.
Oke.
Oke, Prof. Oke.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Selamat lemai.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Prof. Thank you,
Prof.
dokter.
Thank you, Prof.
Welcome.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
All right.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you all. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
You too. Have a good day.
Mhm. Okay, I'm going to